So I'm here with Jennifer Pruitt, who is a professor of art history. So Jennifer, you study an area that I think a lot of us probably don't pay attention to, Islamic art and architecture. I'm really curious to learn a little bit more about what that means and what the things that you study can tell us about our own art, our own architecture, and our own place in the world.
Goodness. Well, so Islamic art and architecture kind of broadly refers to the arts and architecture of the Middle East. So it can be defined by a lot of ways, and of course, scholars debate exactly what should be included and not included. But for the purposes of Madison, I'm looking at parts of the Middle East, since the foundation of Islam. So I am pretty much driven by kind of a central question in a lot of my research, which is how do kind of diverse populations interact with and patronize and experience architecture in the Middle East. So my first book, which just came out in March, is about kind of 10th to 12th century. I'm sorry, not 10th to 12th century. 10th to 12th century architecture in mostly Egypt, but somewhat also in uh, uh, Palestine and North Africa. So I think we see how people interact with architecture from this time in a way that I think we can all relate to. You kind of see the humanness of people as you explore their built environment.
Okay, so I think for a lot of us, there isn't necessarily a natural understanding of Islamic culture. Can you talk a little bit more about how they see each other in that art and architecture and what that says about their culture?
Sure. So, as with anything, it's bound by a kind of time and place. So, in the time period that I'm looking at, so we are looking at kind of multi-faith populations of Christians, Jews, and Muslims who are using, architectural spaces. So my research, my first book, centers its discussion around a figure that's extremely controversial and notorious in Islamic history, which is the figure of Al-Hakim, who was considered kind of the mad caliph that destroyed a bunch of churches and was a hugely persecutorial, is that a word? Persecuting ruler of his multi-faith populations, which is a very depressing tale. And so the nice thing about someone who's just totally kind of bizarre is that we have a lot of historical documentation of what happened during his reign. So I used him to kind of parse out, okay, well, how did these communities use buildings? What did buildings mean to them? And this sort of thing.
What do you like most about being and teaching at the UW-Madison?
I really love being at UW-Madison. I mean, I love being at a research institution where I can, teach in my own field and still have time for my work and support for my work. I love being among brilliant colleagues who are also really supportive. Like, I think UW has a nice mix of support and rigor. Um, I love the students. I mean, I love that. I actually love the fact that we're in Wisconsin where things are kind of removed from what I work on because it means that, for most of my students, this is the first time they've learned anything about the Islamic world. So I feel like I'm doing kind of a service by introducing to it. So yeah, I love it here. I love Madison.